Hi, fourth graders. My name is Mrs. DeHaven. I'm here to introduce our writing unit for the next few weeks. We will be working on a fictional narrative unit. This is a picture of myself and Mr. Swan. We are the fourth grade teachers at Parkside Elementary, and we will be teaching you writing for the next few weeks. So first I want to talk about a little bit about what is a fictional narrative, because by the end of these few weeks, you will be writing your own fictional narrative. So if you think about the word fictional, you know that fictional means a story, something that's made up, okay? And the narrative part is the story. So a fictional narrative is just simply a made up story. So when it comes to writing, here are some examples of what some fictional narratives that you might be familiar with. They are simply stories that are made up. When it comes to fictional narratives, and really narratives in general, you have certain elements that are in them that I want you to kind of start thinking about before you start writing your own fictional narrative. So you have your characters, the people who are in your story. Maybe your characters are people, maybe they're animals, maybe there's something else that you create. You might have main characters, you might have characters that play much smaller roles. Next, you have the setting. The setting is the time or the place where your story is going to take place. And then we have our plot, and there's a lot that goes into the plot. So I have this diagram for you, and I want you to think of the plot of a narrative, in this case a fictional narrative, as a mountain. You're going to start over here at your introduction, the background, right? Your background includes where you're going to introduce your characters and the setting. You're going to set your reader up for the story. As you move up the mountain, you're going to hit the rising action. The rising action includes the events that lead up to this big problem, the main problem or the conflict in your story. At the top of the mountain, after you explained all those events that lead to the problem, your climax is when the problem reaches this high point in the story. After your climax, you start to go back down the mountain and you have your falling action, where the characters work to solve the problem or the conflict that you had already explained. And then last is your resolution, which is how things end up in the story. So these are probably all some words that you've heard of before, either in reading or writing, and have studied them in stories that you've read. When it comes to writing your own fictional narrative this week, I want you to think about this diagram to help create your story. So to kick off our unit, I'm going to share with you a great story called Gorky Rises, and it's written by William Steig. And I have the book in front of me, but instead of showing you the pages, I have all the pictures up on the screen for you. So you can just keep your eyes right on the screen, and I'll read for you. This is an example of a fictional narrative, and we're going to use this to inspire us to write our own fictional narrative stories coming up. So enjoy Gorky Rises. As soon as his parents kissed him goodbye and left, Gorky set up his laboratory by the kitchen sink and got to work. He took a clean tumbler, let in 1 squirt of water, and added first a little of this and a little of that. A spoon each of chicken soup, tea and vinegar, a sprinkle of coffee grounds, 1 shake of talcum powder, 2 shakes of paprika, a dash of cinnamon, a splash of witch hazel. He stirred vigorously and held the mixture up to the light. Too murky. Very carefully, he put in a bit of his father's clear cologne. Better, but something was still missing. What? Aha! Roses. Gorky stepped out of his laboratory to fetch his mother's perfume. He meant to use just a few drops, but, ravished by the scent of roses, he recklessly poured in all there was, half a bottle. That did it. The thick stuff sank to the bottom of the mixing glass, and he had a reddish golden liquid full of tiny bubbles that glinted like particles of fire. This, obviously, was the magic formula he had long been seeking. With a steady hand, he decanted the pure bubbly part into the perfume bottle and firmly closed it with the glass stopper. Then he went out into the sunlight. He sat the bottle down on a tree stump not far from the house and arranged it around a circle of pebbles and fresh-picked daisies. Then, once he moved back a few paces and solemnly bowed to his magic liquid, once with his arms out sideways, once with his arms straight forward, once with his fingertips to his brow, and once touching his toes, each time saying, Auga luga, anga ooga. Sometime soon, he felt sure, he would learn exactly what sort of magic his bottle contained. He decided, meanwhile, to take it over to Elephant Rock, his best spot for doing nothing, and wait there for further developments. He sauntered through a stretch of white clover, brushing the blossoms with his big feet. What a magical cloverous smell! When he reached Poggle Brook, he stopped a moment to listen to the water. What magical music! He crossed the brook on the scattered stones and continued on his way. It was early summer. Everything was fresh and fair. The grass was green. The sky was blue, immensely blue. The world was flooded with gracious light. No hurry about getting to Elephant Rock. Gorky spread himself out on the green grass, facing the immensely blue sky, and just lay there, letting the sun include him in its warm embrace. The world was all magic, and he had a special bottle of it in his right hand. A small, glittery snake came slithering through the grass, slid over Gorky's belly, circled his bottle 3 times, and wriggled off. Gorky grew hazy. He saw the clouds above as clean as white clothes hung out to dry, and then he was asleep. The wide open sky outside him was bright with brilliant sun, but the sky inside him shimmered with stars. Whatever had kept him fastened to the earth to let go of his hold, and Gorky's slumbering body rose into the air like a bubble rising in water and moved off in an easterly direction. He woke up surrounded with sky, but he was unafraid. The green ground he had been resting on lay well below him, stretched out like an endless carpet. But feeling as airy as the air itself, he knew he would not fall. It was clear now that he had indeed concocted a magic fluid. He could feel the brilliant bubbles flow into his arm from the bottle he held in his hand. He was sailing through the air, very curious as to where he was heading, when a gruesome dragon and a monstrous butterfly came lunging and swiping at him. He almost croaked from fear, but these scary animals turned out to be kites. Holding their strings down below were a couple of puppies. Gorky could see he had made quite an impression on them. They were prancing about like crazy, yapping and pointing away. He waved to them once as he curved over some trees and out of their sight. He was attracting more and more attention. Astonished, bewildered, and bedazzled eyes turned skyward as Gorky went soaring over the countryside, weaving through the air on a wavy course, sometimes higher, sometimes lower, sometimes this way, sometimes that. Farmers stopped their haying and stared up. A pig in a rowboat dropped his fishing rod and stared up. An artist stopped painting and stared up. A bunny's swing halted mid-air to give her time to stare up. A fox dropped a goose he had just caught and stared up. The goose ran off, but had to stop and stare up too. As Gorky passed over Pruneville, they were craning their necks out of their windows, running out of stores and houses, staring up from the streets. An old sea captain dug out his spyglass and fixed it on the mysterious creature sailing through the summer sky. What the doodad was keeping him up there? A house painter on his ladder, his brush dripping yellow, stopped his smearing to stare into the blue. With the whole world watching, how could Gorky just do nothing? He stuck his thumbs in his armpits and crossed his eyes. He wiggled his hips, he clicked his heels together, and twiddled his toes. 2 rabbit aeronauts, swinging along in their balloon, were electrified from ears to scuts at the sight of a young frog floating by upside down. Leaving the rabbits flabbergasted, Gorky went swooping on a graceful downswing right over his cousin Gogol's lawn. And now he really felt like showing off. Gogol was out on the grass with his toys when Gorky came rolling by, turning in the air like a wheel on its axle. Gogol was Google-eyed. He tore after his cousin, yelling, "Gorky, Gorky, what's up?" "I am," Gorky yelled back, and that's all he had time to say before he was whisked up into the sky again. Zooming along in the upper reaches of the atmosphere, he remembered Gogol's look of stupid wonder and couldn't stop laughing. It was some time before he stopped and noticed he was under a canopy of swarthy clouds that spread their gloom on the earth below. The peaceful blue sky had been left far behind. Now, in a sudden rage, a storm went wild around him. Lightning shattered the sky. Thunder banged and bellowed. Hailstones battered his body. He was tossed about by gusts of wind so strong they almost ripped his pants off. It was no frolic, and it went on and on until the hail gave way to great slapping raindrops as large as acorns. What a relief when he finally found himself in the blue sky again. He had been lifted high above the storm. Faint lightning was visible in the clouds below, and he could hear dim thunder. The storm was roving on, but he was barely drifting now. Day faded. Half the sky flushed crimson. Then night spread far and wide. The lights of a town came on way beneath him, and Gorky realized he was no longer moving at all, but he was suspended in the heavens like a coat on a hanger. He hung there a long, long time, wondering where he was, exactly what spot on the map he was over. There was nothing around him but the secret, silent night, the sea of blinking stars. Dreamily, he began asking himself questions he could not answer. Did anyone know where he was? Did his parents know? He wished he was home with them now, asleep in his feather bed. He was tired. How could he get back down there where he belonged? Could he ever get back? It was the magic liquid that was keeping him aloft. What if he let go? Would he plummet straight to the ground? He held the bottle tighter. He had to stay awake, or he was afraid of a shocking crash. Morning was on its way, the sky beginning to lighten, when Gorky had an idea that shook him awake. What if he dripped out the liquid one drop at a time? Would the magic lose its grip little by little? He decided to find out. He removed the stopper from the bottle and released one single drop, and he fell, zazoom, then suddenly stopped. And again, and the same thing happened. Another drop from the bottle, another drop toward earth. On the third try, he let out a few drops and took such a steep plunge he thought it was goodbye Gorky. It was just one at a time after that. As the sun was coming up, Gorky gratefully was going down, drip and a drop, drip and a drop. Soon he was quite close to the dear solid ground. How good it looked. Was it part of the magic that he was directly over Elephant Rock? It had to be. 2 more drops, and 1 day late, he was sitting firmly on the rock itself. He'd had just enough liquid to reach the earth. No, there was 1 drop more. As he tilted the bottle, it made its appearance, waited on the lip a moment, and let itself fall on Elephant Rock. And a most remarkable thing happened. In fact, a miracle. Elephant Rock began to quiver and bestir itself. A large fan-like ear spread out on each side. A trunk curled upward and trumpeted, and Gorky was astride a warm, live elephant that proceeded to walk away from the spot where it had been resting for the last 10 million years. It set out for Gorky's house, shuffling through the dewy grass. Imagine the effect on Cousin Gogol when Gorky turned up again, this time on an elephant, after flying past without wings the day before. Gorky's parents had been out all night searching for him. By now, they were so worried. They were scouring the terrain in the neighborhood of home, peering behind every bush, stone, and tree, and into every hole and crevice, no matter how tiny. When they saw a tremendous elephant lumbering toward them with their son on its back and were sure of what they were seeing, they tore over, crying, "Gorky, darling, dear Gorky, where on earth have you been?" "I haven't been on earth," said Gorky. "You haven't been where?" his mother exclaimed. "Who is this elephant?" his father inquired. Gorky took a deep breath and went into his story. His father wasn't buying any of it, and even his doting mother didn't seem to believe him. "Well," said Gorky, "this real-life elephant used to be Elephant Rock. There is no rock over there anymore." "Bogwash," his father snorted. "No more Elephant Rock. This I've got to see." When they got to the place where the rock used to be, Gorky's parents stood and stared some long seconds, first at the ground, then at the elephant. Their mouths hung open, but no words came out. At last, Gorky's father said, "Well, son, you must be tired after all that flying. Let's go home and get some sleep." Gorky Rises is one of my favorite stories. I think it's so silly and so fun. And hopefully it's going to inspire you as a big fourth grader now in writing your own fictional narrative. So what you need to do for today, you don't need to write anything down. Okay, this is the first day of school. This is the first day of our unit. We just want to think about ideas for your own fictional narrative story. So what you'll be doing is you're going to write your own magic potion story, very similar to Gorky Rises. So if you have some ideas, you're welcome to jot them down now and kind of brainstorm a little bit, but you do not need to write anything down. I just want you to be inspired by Gorky and the story. And then tomorrow we will work on brainstorming and coming up with an idea for your own story. So I hope that you enjoy the rest of your day. I hope you enjoyed Gorky Rises, and I will see you next time.